Welcome to The Pitch. My name is Robin Young, and I'm the publisher of Orthopedics This Week. I'll be your moderator for tonight's program. And as a reminder, this is a monthly program and is scheduled for the second Thursday of each month, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. At each program, two promising companies will present their technologies and their business plan to our panel of experts. With that, it is now my pleasure and honor to introduce Sterile Ally Logistics. Some of the biggest, most successful companies in history have made logistics the core of their business model. Sterile Ally's business model is all about the logistics of sterilization. With the wave of hospital and ASC mergers and acquisitions, the central sterilization departments are starting to buckle under the increased workload. What could possibly go wrong when central sterilization departments are overworked or understaffed? Probably don't want to think about that. Well, luckily, Sterile Ally has a logistics solution. Here is Sterile Ally's pitch.
Sterile processing is a critical basic utility of healthcare. There is a nationwide shortage of sterilization capacity, and this has resulted in reduced quality and service levels that impacts patient care. Sterile Ally's approach is the creation of independent, localized sterilization service centers to support the central sterile departments. The basic functions of the central sterile department is the cleaning, washing, inspection, assembly, sterilization, and storage of instrument sets. The continued increases of surgical procedures performed and the more complex procedures that require more instruments per case has drastically increased the volume demands beyond the capacity of central sterile departments. ASCs are facing similar problems, the lack of capacity and enhanced regulations. Today, 15 to 30% of the volume of the central sterile department is associated with the medical clinics that have been acquired by the hospitals, and this just added more fuel to the fire. So how did we get here? Initially, everything was balanced, but in life, change is the only constant. More ORs are added, more complex procedures, acquisitions of medical clinics and others, and now ASCs. In the meantime, the central sterile departments have at best had only modest improvements. With the best of intentions, it is not uncommon that instrument sets are missing instruments, blood and bone are retained on instruments, sterile barriers are broken, and this leads to poor patient outcomes. I personally have lost 2 family members to hospital-acquired infections. One are the options. One is hope. 2 is to expand, but many facilities are actually trapped in the basements. 3, build a new off-site facility at staggering high cost and have significant change management issues. 4th, enter Sterile Ally, the logical option. In simplistic terms, Sterile Ally provides additional infrastructure. This resource is available without healthcare providers having to use their limited CapEx funds. Sterile Ally provides all sterile processing functions and logistics. Being independent, Sterile Ally can offer services to all healthcare providers within the service area. Also, providing sterile storage allows the repurposing of expensive, non-productive space to more meaningful use, improving the healthcare provider's peace of mind with an enhanced quality and service from both Sterile Ally and their own central sterile departments. Combined, the management team has extensive experience in healthcare and medical devices, turning around troubled businesses and departments doing what others have failed to accomplish. Sterile Ally's independent localized sterilization service centers increase sterilization capacity, allowing revenue growth without CapEx expenditures, enhance facility utilization, enhances the healthcare provider's peace of mind with improved quality and service. For additional information, please feel free to contact us.
Presenting today on behalf of Sterile Ally is David Kelman, who's President, CEO, and co-founder, and John Harper, who is the Chief Operating Officer. Let's start our questions with Michael Sherman. Mike, what questions would you have for David?
Thanks. Thanks, Robin. David, this is really a fascinating model you're proposing, and I've got a lot of questions. I won't ask them all because I need to leave some for my team here. But it seems like it's a dramatic economic capital endeavor. How are you planning to fund this? And am I correct in assuming that it is in fact a rather large capital expense for you to put this system in place?
You're correct, Mike, that it is an extensive CapEx, but by utilizing operational leases for the equipment and long-term tenant leases on warehouse space that we can utilize where the cost per square foot is about 1,000 times less than what the hospital's cost per square foot is how we're able to have a very efficient utilization of CapEx.
So tell us about the current status. Have you rolled this out in any particular market, region?
We have not, but John has had experience running off-site sterilization facilities previously when he was at the University of Minnesota, and I let John expand on that. And we've had significant interest in the Seattle-Tacoma area, where John has been most recently, where many of the Central Sterile personnel are either former employees or colleagues of John. But we've also had interest from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. It's just getting the first facility up, and that's what the initial request for funding is for.
And and what is that initial request for funding? I don't think I heard it in the pitch.
Between 13 and 15 million will get us operational, and that'll get the first facility up. And then with that positive cash flow, within 7 years, we would have 5 sites operational, generating over $100 million in top line revenue.
Does anyone do this currently? Is there
some of the hospital systems within a system base do this, like Vanderbilt, like I mentioned, University of Minnesota. There's probably in the neighborhood about 15 of these across the country currently. But out of those, there's probably only about 5 that actually are run efficiently and effectively. And John was one of the early people that has successfully run these offsite facilities.
But these are run for individual hospital systems. They're not marketed out. Okay.
That's correct. That's what makes ours unique, our business model.
Well, I could keep going, but I know my colleagues have a lot of questions to ask, so I'm gonna yield my rest of my time.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Very good questions. I'm with you. I have a lot of questions as well. So Scott, I'm going to go to you next. What questions would you have for Sterile Ally, David and John?
Okay, thank you. It's an interesting premise and has, I'll say, analogous features to sterilization services for reprocessing. And there have been firms out there that do reprocessing, and they've been consolidated. So can you comment on either lessons learned from reprocessing facilities and how you're going to overcome some of the challenges that they've had?
Yeah, one of the things with reprocessing, folks, that when you reprocess a single-use device, it is now a medical device, and you have to go through the full 510K and FDA registration for that. Being that we're just providing the sterilization services of existing instrumentation, we do not require 510Ks or in reality even registration with the FDA, but we will be registered with the FDA. So that's one of the important lessons. The other thing is that there's the technology that's come forward has helped with this as well, as far as some of the software that's out there, as well as the marking of instrumentation, so we can track instrumentation.
If I heard you right, you said that you'll have you need roughly $13 million. You're going to develop 5 centers, and in 7 years, you'll have top line revenue of $100 million. What does that mean for profitability? And nowhere in the 3-minute video pitch did you indicate what you're actually asking for. So if you were raised $13 million, what's the ROI? What's your planned ROI? Why people should think there's a reason to believe to invest?
Basically, at full capacity, each facility will generate about 30 million top line revenue with about a 40% EBITDA. So it's a very cash positive business. We be cash positive within 3 to 4 years, and using that cash is how we fund those additional sites going forward. Obviously, there's other. If we wanted to grow faster, we could either do convertible bonds or convertible loans, or search out additional funding in the future. But it's a very worthwhile business.
Okay, maybe the last thing I'll ask is, you started talking about laser etching. You know, there are other technologies like near field and RFID. I'm not up on the latest tracking technologies, but if it's going to take you 5 years to get there, what are you thinking about how you're going to manage that piece?
The technologies that we utilize would be technologies that are readily available today. So basically, once we have the funding, within 12 months, we would be operational. And within 12 to 16 months, we anticipate the facility to be at full capacity. And like I said, within 3 to 4 years, we would be cash positive. Within 7 years, we're generating over $100 million on top line revenue. With even though some of the facilities wouldn't be at full capacity, we'd be generating over 30% EBITDA on the 5 sites.
Okay, so sorry, but let me just put a bookend on that piece. So what's in it for the investors? How do they get their money out?
Either they can continue on, and either they get it out by the business being sold. As you mentioned, there's consolidation within the reprocessing, or we could eventually do a IPO.
Thank you, Scott, very much. Audrey, what questions do you have for Sterile Ally?
Hi, David. My first question is in the customer validation space. Can you tell us a little bit more, other than just interest from hospitals in Seattle? What have you done so far to validate what you see as a need?
We've gone across the country, meeting with some of the world-renowned health institutions. We've been in contact with various healthcare providers. At times we've even done some non-binding LOIs to show the interest. But until we actually have an agreement that we actually have the funds to build a facility and location, it's hard to get binding letters of agreement. We've also been spoken with medical device companies. We've also been through those medical device companies. We've had significant interest because they have so much money tied up in their instrument sets, and especially the ones that they have to do loaners, and they got to not worry about moving those to ASCs, and they can't afford to double the inventory of instruments and implants. And at least from an instrument standpoint, if we can double their turns per week or turns per month, they're very interested in working with us. And that's one of the areas where the hospitals are very interested in working with us. The model that we're looking at as well, they don't want to, the hospitals like the model where we're only taking off their excess demand or their problem childs.
Okay, great. So as Scott said, that answer spurred me to at least 2 or 3 more questions. So can you tell us a little bit what your intended pricing model looks like?
Basically, on the instrument tray, there's a little bit difference in complexity. So we have basically a tiered pricing that's 6 tiers up, and with a standard delivery, which includes logistics. And that's a key component to this as well, as far as that as hospital systems acquire more facilities, having that logistics component. So based on the set complexity is a standard charge for a standard delivery of 48 hours. Now, if they need it on a rush basis, and the less time we have, obviously you pay a premium just like you do with FedEx with next day delivery. And also then for storage, then we also would charge a storage fee for instruments that are stored there for extended period of time. And we'd also be looking at minimum of 3-year contracts.
In terms of the relationship with the manufacturers, would they be paying customers as well, or?
they would be a paying customer. And this is really what works out well. The hospitals have said that they're willing to pay part of the price, hoping the medical device companies would pay part as well. And they really see that as actually it's a win-win, because the cost for the hospitals to sterilize the instrument, the loaner trays would actually go down, and the med device companies are getting a benefit because they're getting their trays turned faster, and for that price, it helps them out on their CapEx. And we've been able to validate some of that pricing through for some of the med device companies of what they're willing to pay.
Okay. And when you've talked with the hospitals, what's your confidence level based on the feedback they've given that they would give you the business on faster turning procedures and sets versus those lower turning procedures and sets?
Actually, and this is where John's experience really comes into play, is the high turn sets that are used daily. Those are the ones that you really do need to leave in the hospital. The ones that are used once a week or once a month, those are the ones that would come to us. Also, the two main pain points for the hospitals, one is we mentioned in the presentation, the medical clinic instrumentation, which is 20 to 30% of their volume in many of these hospitals. So we could take that off, and that we can do on almost a scheduled basis to the medical clinics on Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays or such. And then the loaner business from the med device companies is also what the hospitals and the central sterile staff want help with. So it sort of works out very well. We take what the low turning, because that also helps them from their storage standpoint, freeing up things that aren't being utilized or space that could be utilized in other ways.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for entertaining my focus on the customer part. I think I'm done for now.
I do have a couple questions. You know, when I was on Wall Street looking at companies, there are some basics that I looked at every company. First, was there a clear statement of the problem? And I have to say, in your video, you stated the problem quite nicely. It was very clear. The next thing is I look at the team. Does the team have a track record of doing this kind of work? And I know, David, you had referred to John and his background. I wonder if you could give us just 20 seconds on each of you. What is your background and how relevant is it to this project?
Definitely. I have been in healthcare for the last 24 years. The first 8 years of my tenure in healthcare was as a surgical technologist. And about 8 months into that tenure, I took on the role of leading our sterile processing, because I was in a temporary role prior to that. And so the last, basically all 24 years, that's what I've been focused on, is in sterile processing, and have gone through the gamuts in those different directions. And one of the things that I always kind of look at, especially with healthcare, one of the things that's been touted for the last several years that I know of is working at the top of the license. And unfortunately, with what we're seeing in sterile processing today, we're being pulled in so many different directions on a hospital level that sterile processing is not being put at the top of their license. And that's where we're really kind of looking at this from our standpoint.
And you're referring to a mission critical function.
Very much so. There is not a surgical procedure that does not require some sort of sterilized instrumentation. And the same thing as Dave mentioned with the clinics. A lot of clinics are out there, and Joint Commission, DNV, and several others have come back and stated that because this clinic is under the guise of a large umbrella health system, we need to ensure that you're following those same standards.
David, your background.
Yeah, I have 30 years of experience with the medical device industry. Started up a startup business within Smith & Nephew as a sort of a white box, low cost system or business to provide implant systems to hospitals at much lower cost. From there, I went to Owens & Minor and worked on a development of a point of care and logistics managing loaner systems for medical device companies. And from that outgrew this type of business, looking at what we can do to help out the med device companies, but also the hospital systems.
Third thing I looked at whenever I was looking at companies for funding is I wanted to see the customers voting in favor of this company. I wanted to see contracts, even if it was a startup, even if it's pre-commercialization. I'd love to see a customer on the board of directors. I want to see customers who are voting in favor of this and giving me clear points of differentiation that will drive their decisions. And I figured if 10 customers loved it, we can find another 100 that might love it too. So those are the things I look for. And generally, if the team has a track record of success, if the customers are voting for it, if the problem is clear, you have better than average odds of making it with funding. There was one other question, and I do want to make sure I do this, cover this. Have you done any modeling and I'm switching gears here on you. Have you done any modeling on your carbon footprint versus sterile single-use disposables?
We haven't done it from the single-use disposables, but one of the things that we would be utilizing is a lot of the newer equipment. When we look at water and energy uses, we would be much greener than the current sterile processing departments. That's one of the things that John and I are both looking at very closely, is what we can do along those lines. I will say that looking at disposables, they typically are a lot more expensive than doing a single sterilization run.
Wonderful. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your cogent answers and your even more insightful questions panel. With that, now let's turn it over to our audience and ask you, the audience, what you think. Is this a company a game changer? Could logistics challenge the standard of care? Or is there more work to do? So let's put up the poll for our audience. Let's share the results. And that was a clear winner and future game changer, will challenge the standard of care. Great job. Well, everybody, companies, panel, and most importantly, audience, this was a great pitch. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you. We are taking 1 month off. We'll see you in October. Thank you.